Welcome back to Investing Talk podcast. Today we're tackling a fascinating and incredibly relevant question for you. Is Nuscale Power a good time to buy now? We've gathered a stack of sources from, granular stock analyses to comprehensive market reports and our own research notes really aiming to give you the clearest possible picture of this company. They're right at the cutting edge of energy innovation. And before we really get into this analysis, if you're finding value in our discussions, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and comment. And if you'd like to support us, maybe consider buying us a coffee. Also, if there's a specific company you'd like us to look into, please just leave a comment below.
That's right. Our mission today is to thoroughly examine Nuscale Power. This is a company that's really at the vanguard of small modular reactor, or SMR, technology. We'll be distilling the key insights from all these materials, helping you understand not just the current state of play, but also the immense potential and the significant pitfalls that lie ahead. What we'll uncover is, frankly, a high-stakes, high-reward scenario, and we're here to help you navigate that complexity.
Okay, let's unpack this then, starting with Nuscale's core business. What do the fundamental numbers tell us? Where do they stand right now, and what's the trajectory look like?
Right, looking at the fundamentals, Nuscale Power reported a trailing 12-month revenue of $56.13 million. Now, that's a notable increase from $37.05 million in 2024,
Okay.
which itself was a pretty significant jump, about 62.4% from the previous year. So the top line, revenue, is definitely growing. And that's usually a positive signal, right? Especially for a company in a growth phase. It shows they're making progress in generating sales, even if those are, often early-stage contracts or engineering services, rather than full-blown reactor deployments.
That revenue growth does sound promising, but for a company like Nuscale, they're operating in this highly capital-intensive pre-commercial phase.
Right.
What's the real story behind that top-line number? Is it truly sustainable, or is it more of a signal of initial progress that still needs immense investment before it actually translates to meaningful returns?
You've hit on a crucial point there. What's fascinating and comes through clearly in our sources is that despite this revenue growth, the company remains unprofitable. We're looking at a net loss of about $124 million for the trailing 12 months, with an earnings per share, or EPS, of -1.07. Now, our sources do indicate those losses are, in fact, narrowing slightly, but they are still quite significant. And a critical observation from our materials is the absence of real commercial orders for their actual SMR unit so far.
Right, so no firm contracts to build the reactors yet.
Exactly, which means profitability isn't just around the corner. It's, a common characteristic of these early-stage capital-intensive tech companies. They spend heavily on R&D, regulatory approvals, all before mass production even starts.
So revenue trending up, bottom line still deep in the red. Classic profile for innovative tech, but it definitely raises questions about their financial stability. What about their overall financial health? Can they sustain this period of, significant cash burn?
Well, on the plus side, Nuscale's debt levels are modest. That's a definite positive. For a technology developer at this stage, having limited leverage suggests, a more stable foundation reduces immediate financial pressure.
Okay.
However, and this is a key takeaway from the reports we looked at, they are burning cash. And at an accelerating rate. Losses in 2024 almost doubled from the previous year. That's a bit of a red flag, right, in terms of cash flow. Yeah, it raises questions about their runway if major commercial contracts don't materialize fairly soon. The company's market capitalization stands at a substantial $10.23 billion.
$10 billion?
Yeah, but those consistent negative earnings and the ongoing need for capital definitely elevate its risk profile. The market is clearly valuing future potential, not present profits.
That's a mind-bending valuation then, over $10 billion for a company still in the red, burning cash faster. What does that tell us about their position in the broader energy market, and who are they up against in this high-stakes game?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, Nuscale is undoubtedly a leader in SMR technology. They're positioned right at the forefront of what many are calling a potential nuclear renaissance. This could be a transformative technology for global clean energy, offering scalability, flexibility that traditional large-scale nuclear plants just can't match.
Right, the modular aspect.
Exactly. However, this is still a very new or nascent market. It's fraught with significant regulatory and commercial hurdles that need to be cleared globally. Now, the company does benefit from being a subsidiary of Fluor Enterprises. That provides some backing and some stability.
Fluor, okay.
But it faces stiff competition. And this isn't just from established nuclear giants like, say, Westinghouse or EDF. It's also from other SMR players. GE, Hitachi, Rolls-Royce, they're in the mix too. And of course, there's the rapidly evolving renewable energy sector.
Yeah.
Think massive solar and wind farm developers. They're all vying for market share in this global push for clean energy.
So it's a crowded field, really.
It is. And each competitor brings different strengths, legacy experience, maybe faster deployment capabilities for some renewables. It's complex.
Okay, so given those fundamentals, growing revenue, but no profits, modest debt, but high cash burn, strong position, but in a brand new, highly competitive market, how do we even begin to value a company like Nuscale? Traditional metrics must be incredibly tricky here, maybe completely irrelevant.
They absolutely are tricky. Due to the ongoing losses, traditional PE, price to earnings, and forward PE ratios, they're non-starters. They're essentially not applicable because there just aren't any positive earnings to divide by. That immediately tells you we're valuing this based entirely on future potential, not present profit.
Yeah.
And when you look at the price-sales ratio, it's extremely high,
All right.
which, yes, is common for early-stage tech firms with low current revenues, but it really underscores the incredibly high market expectations baked into that price. Our sources highlight that this isn't just market optimism. It's the market pricing in a transformation of the energy sector itself. They're treating Nuscale less like a current developer and more like a future utility giant before they've even built a commercial-scale plant.
So it's less about what they're selling today and entirely about what the market believes they'll sell tomorrow, potentially years down the line. What about other valuation approaches then? How are sophisticated investors or analysts trying to put a number on something so rooted in future projections?
Yeah, that's the big question. How is the market valuing Nuscale? Since traditional metrics fall short, analysts often have to resort to methods like discounted future cash flows. But these are based on highly speculative projections of SMR deployments decades into the future.
Yeah.
Very sensitive to assumptions.
Right, lots of guesswork.
A lot. They might also look at comparable sales multiples from other pre-revenue, high-growth tech companies, or even try to value the company's intellectual property, its first-mover advantage. Our sources suggest that Nuscale's price models assume substantial success in commercializing its technology. You see that reflected in its steep market cap relative to current sales and zero profits. The price-book ratio can also be inferred as high, considering its valuation versus tangible assets. And while sector averages for SMR companies are kind of all over the place because it's so new,
Makes sense.
Nuscale definitely trades at a significant premium compared to historical metrics for established energy stocks. It's essentially, like I said, a bet on future potential, a forward-looking valuation based purely on the promise of SMRs.
Okay, so the long-term valuation is almost entirely about potential, a leap of faith based on a very optimistic future scenario. But what about the short-term signals? What does the technical analysis show us about the stock's price movements? What are investors doing right now?
Technically, the current price is around $35.90, and it has had a very wide 52-week range. We're talking $6.88 on the low end, up to $53.50 on the high end.
Wow, that's a huge range.
It is. That extreme volatility itself is a strong signal, right?
Yeah.
It signals investor uncertainty, speculative interest, tells you this isn't a stock for the faint of heart. If you look at the moving averages, the 50-day simple moving average, the SMA, is around $40.94. The 200-day SMA is lower at $26.38.
Okay.
So the current price is trading under its 50-day SMA, but still comfortably above its 200-day SMA. This suggests a consolidating intermediate trend. It's not in a strong upward or downward move at this exact moment.
Yeah.
More like finding its footing after some pretty significant price swings.
So it's been quite a roller coaster and seems to be in a bit of a holding pattern right now. Where do the key price levels lie? Support and resistance. What can we expect maybe in the immediate future based on these technicals?
Yeah, key support levels seem to appear in the $26 to $35 range. That means the price tends to find a floor there. Buying interest typically emerges around those levels. Resistance, on the other hand, is near $41 a cent. That seems to be a ceiling where selling pressure tends to increase.
And the recent high was $53, you said?
Right, $53.50. So based on these technicals, our sources suggest we might expect prices to kind of float within that $34 to $41 window in the short term, bouncing between those levels as the market digests news or waits for a catalyst.
And what about other indicators, things like RSI? Are we seeing any strong buy or sell signals there, or is it as mixed as the price action suggests?
Good question. The 14-day Relative Strength Index, RSI, is pretty neutral. It's at 51.51,
Okay.
which signals neither overbought nor oversold conditions. So that further reinforces that idea of a consolidating trend kind of waiting. What's really interesting here, though, and critical for risk assessment, is the high volatility, around 13.66%.
And the beta.
Ah, yes, the beta. It ranges from 2.07 up to 3.27 in some analyses. A beta over 2? Well, it isn't just a number. It means Nuscale's price action is amplified. It's a high-octane bet that moves far more dramatically than the broader market.
So if the S&P moves 1%.
Nuscale could easily move 2 or 3%, maybe more, in the same direction, or the opposite. And recent momentum is mixed, only about 40% green days in the last month. This just reinforces the idea of a stock that can swing quite a bit. Makes it really challenging for short-term traders to predict.
Okay, beyond the numbers and charts, what's the buzz? What's the narrative around Nuscale Power? What are analysts saying, and what news should we be watching for that could really shift things, move the stock?
Well, analysts are generally bullish. There's a consensus buy rating from both the 7 and 14 analyst surveys we look at.
So the pros are optimistic, mostly.
Mostly, yes. It shows a positive outlook, likely reflecting that long-term optimism for SMR technology itself. However, their average price targets are around $35.71.
That's basically where it is now.
Exactly. Yeah. Which indicates limited short-term upside, according to these professional forecasts. It suggests maybe a lot of the optimism is already priced in, at least for the near term. It's also worth noting the targets range widely, from $21 on the low end to $46 on the high end. That shows considerable dispersion in opinion among analysts, really highlights the uncertainty.
Big range.
Yeah. And a point of caution from our sources, Nuscale actually missed recent quarterly estimates on both revenue and earnings.
Ooh, that's not great.
No. For a company selling a future vision, that can specifically signal either, operational execution challenges or maybe that the market's confidence in their timeline is a bit overextended right now.
Missing estimates is definitely a point of concern, even for a growth story. What's the broader sentiment like then? How does Nuscale fit into the overall market mood?
Sentiment-wise, I'd say it's generally positive, but with clear, cautious undertones. There's enthusiasm for the potential, for SMR tech, Nuscale's leadership. But investors are acutely aware of the significant risks, and this is reflected in the broader market's Fear and Greed Index, which, as you mentioned, is currently low at 39. That indicates fear.
Right.
And this cautious macro environment can certainly influence individual stock sentiment. Even good news for Nuscale might be met with less exuberance if the overall market is nervous,
Makes sense. So, given all this, what are the specific catalysts? What should investors be watching for that could potentially move the needle for Nuscale Power, both short-term and longer-term?
Okay, short-term. A key catalyst is definitely their upcoming earnings report. That's set for November 6, 2025. That'll be a critical moment. We'll see if they can start to meet or beat expectations, especially on cash burn and project timelines.
Any other short-term things?
Yeah, any announcement of a major commercial contract. And we're talking a tangible order for several SMR units, not just another exploratory agreement or MOU.
Right, a real sale.
Exactly. Or a significant regulatory milestone. That could also catalyze significant price moves. For instance, getting further design certifications from other national regulators beyond the US NRC. That would be a huge positive signal. These are the kinds of concrete developments that could turn speculative interest into tangible progress.
And for those with a longer time horizon, the patient investors, what are the big picture drivers that could really propel Nuscale forward? Maybe make this a truly transformative investment.
Long-term, the upside really hinges on the broad commercialization of their SMR technology. That means moving from development to actual deployment at scale in various countries. This also requires securing necessary regulatory approvals across multiple jurisdictions globally. That's a complex, often lengthy process.
Bureaucracy hurdles.
Big time. Strong, sustained policy support for clean energy, and specifically nuclear deployments from governments worldwide, is also essential. Other things could be industry mergers and acquisitions. Maybe Nuscale gets acquired by a larger energy player, or maybe they acquire someone else. Or major governmental nuclear initiatives could provide substantial tailwinds, creating a more favorable environment for SMR adoption. The sheer scale of the global energy transition means that if SMRs gain traction, the market could be absolutely enormous.
We've talked a lot about the upside, the potential, the exciting technology, but no investment is without risk, especially one this forward-looking. What are the specific risk factors for Nuscale Power that a prospective investor needs to consider very, very carefully?
Oh, there are several significant risks, and it's crucial to understand them. First, stock-specific risks. There's the ongoing lack of current profitability. The company isn't self-sustaining yet, relies on external funding. There's also the risk of delayed commercialization. Getting these advanced reactors actually built and operating is monumental, complex, time-consuming. Things can always go wrong.
Always delays in big projects.
Almost always. Then there's the heavy dependence on regulatory approvals and customer adoption factors largely outside their direct control. And, as we mentioned, the reliance on ongoing funding to keep the lights on. This raises an important question. With an unproven commercial model, execution risk remains exceptionally high. Can they deliver on the promise of SMRs at scale, on time? Can they balance investor expectations with the sheer complexity of nuclear innovation?
Those are substantial company-specific challenges. Beyond Nuscale itself, what about the broader market? Industry risks that could impact them, regardless of how well they execute.
Right, looking at market and sector risks, the nuclear industry itself faces potentially prolonged regulatory delays. That can push timelines out significantly, increase costs for everyone involved. There are also persistent public perception challenges around nuclear energy. Despite the safety and clean energy benefits of modern SMRs, that history lingers.
Chernobyl, Fukushima.
Yeah, exactly. Competition from cheaper, more rapidly deployable renewables like solar and wind is also a constant factor. That could make SMRs less attractive in certain markets or for certain uses. And macro policy uncertainties globally could impact the sector. Depends on how different governments prioritize energy sources, climate change solutions. It's a moving target.
And the volatility.
And finally, yes, that high volatility we talked about, the beta over 2. It amplifies market swings. Any downturn in the broader market could hit Nuscale significantly harder. It's like a magnifying glass for market sentiment, both good and bad.
So, okay, after sifting through all this information, the financials, the technicals, the risks, the immense potential, what's the overall picture? What's our kind of investment thesis summary for our listener here?
Well, our sources collectively provide an overall rating of 4.5 out of 10.
Okay, not exactly glowing.
No. And the rationale is pretty clear. Nuscale represents a high upside, but also very high risk, speculative bet on small modular nuclear reactors. Management seems to be executing reasonably well on revenue growth, which is a positive early signal. But commercial orders for actual reactors and, crucially, profitability, they are not imminent. Negative cash flow persists, meaning they'll need continued capital injections. The recent price appreciation combined with the high volatility makes short-term trading extremely risky, especially when near-term analyst targets predict very little upside from the current price.
So for a short-term investor, it sounds like a very tough proposition. More questions than answers right now, maybe.
I think that's fair. For someone looking further out, though, someone willing to take that big bet on the future of energy, what does the long-term opportunity truly look like? And who is this investment really suited for? The long-term opportunity could be substantial, truly substantial, if SMR adoption accelerates globally, if it transforms the energy landscape by providing reliable, clean, scalable power. However, the path to that acceleration is, as we've discussed, fraught with regulatory, commercial, technical uncertainties. Holding through the inevitable volatility would require a very high risk tolerance.
Birds of steel.
Pretty much. So what this means for your investment strategy is that this stock is best suited only for highly risk-tolerant investors. Those seeking long-term exposure to speculative clean nuclear technology, it's expressly not recommended for short-term trading. The volatility is too high, predictability too low, lack of immediate catalysts in the current quarter. A long-term investment here is genuinely a high-stakes, high-reward scenario. It demands patience and a very strong conviction in the future of SMRs.
There you have it, a comprehensive look at Nuscale Power. It's certainly a fascinating company, pushing the boundaries of clean energy, but definitely one that comes with significant considerations for any investor, depending on their risk appetite and their time horizon.
Indeed. And as you consider Nuscale Power, maybe ponder this thought. If SMR technology truly takes off, if it becomes a cornerstone of future global energy grids, how might that fundamentally reshape not just the energy sector itself, but potentially geopolitical power dynamics? How might it impact reliance on fossil fuels and fundamentally alter our collective approach to tackling climate change? It's a question that extends far beyond just this single stock's performance, touching on really macro-level shifts for the next century.
Exactly. A lot to think about there. Thank you for joining us for this exploration into Nuscale. We hope this analysis helps you make informed decisions. We'll be back soon with another vital topic for your portfolio and your understanding of the markets.